this Troy Bilt Bronco today we're taking a look at. Customer brought it in and said that they had someone replace the carburetor on it on their Kohler Courage 19, and it does not run right at all. Erratic running. I'm going to show you exactly what's going on with this and how to fix it. Keep in mind that these carburetors Kohler has made obsolete, so you cannot get an OEM carburetor, and if you can, they're a couple $100. They brought a new HIPAA carburetor in that's an aftermarket. Let's see if that works, if that's the actual problem or exactly what's going on. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as we go along if you enjoy the content. I have the hood off here, going to take a look, and the first thing I notice is yes, they definitely did install some brand of new carburetor. Not exactly sure what brand it is. Everything else looks halfway decent. I always like to check for a crack over here because it seems like there's always a crack right in the side of the block there. This one looks okay. It does look, however, like the top enclosure plate gasket is definitely leaking. Those bolts may have backed out, so we're going to want to address that while we're in here also. But let's show you what it's doing as far as the running goes. The fuel looks to be clear. I don't see anything in it as I look down in there. It smells pretty decent. When I take the choke all the way off, it dies out completely. Most of you are going to want to adjust this little jet here on the side and play with it for a while. Well, that's not going to matter in this case. It doesn't matter where you put it. Something is going on with this, with the air fuel mixture, causing it to run like this. It's either bad fuel, it's a bad fuel supply, it's got an air leak, or that aftermarket carburetor just wasn't a good quality. Let's dive a little bit deeper. Go ahead and check the oil real quick. The oil looks completely clear and at the right level. That's great. No smell of fuel. Good again. Usually want to check that oil before you start it. Take the air cleaner cover off here. Looks like a relatively new filter also. Get us a 5/16 up top. There's a bolt that sits down through that holds that air cleaner on from the top, and then we've got two that hold the air cleaner on here. These are 10 millimeters. Just 10 millimeter nuts. And now the whole assembly comes straight out and forward. You can also take your breather tube out either there or at the valve cover side. Straight out. I'm not going to worry about that EPA line or anything, just leave it on there. The front gasket just fell right off. No big deal. Carburetor looks to be in fairly decent shape. Don't really see any issues there. Does look like we have a new fuel filter, so maybe the gas has also been switched out. And check that out. I still am going to drain the gas since I don't know where it came from. That's always a good thing to do. It's never a good idea to trust a customer's word that it's got good fuel in it. I don't know how long ago this carburetor was put on, if it was just, you know, this week or last week, or it's been a month or two, or what the situation is, but we're sure gonna find out. That fuel just looks fresh as can be, and again, it doesn't smell bad. Take our 5/16 or 8 millimeter off here. Ground wires hooked up. It's got our lock washer on there also, towards the back. everything here is looking good. You can't take this carburetor off without twisting this whole assembly, so I'm going to pull the black adapter back and just twist it slightly so I clear everything here. I guess I will unplug that also. Just unplug my solenoid at the bottom. Turn everything to the side, and the carburetor is completely off. So our black plastic adapter and the stud can come out. Everything there looks good except maybe a little bit dirty on the back side. I don't really see any issues. Gasket on the front looks good also. And I don't see any cracks in this adapter. If you're seeing any cracks in this adapter, you're going to want to replace it because that'll cause an air leak. But no, everything here is looking real good. The gasket at the back, which is probably the most important gasket, looks like it's also been replaced, like it's new. So that leads me to believe either this fuel is bad or the carburetor itself is bad. Now this fuel, I'm usually a pretty good judge of whether it's the fuel or not, so I'm gonna say not the fuel in this case. We're gonna switch out the fuel anyway again, but I'm gonna replace this carburetor with one that I've had a little bit better luck with. These HIPAA carburetors. The customer brought one in and said, hey, I bought this one. It looked like it had the best reviews. These are some of the only carburetors that I like to use as far as aftermarkets. They seem like they work a lot better than a lot of the other brands out there. We've got this big old HIPAA carburetor box. Now, if I was going to order a carburetor, I would not order this big box with all these accessories in it. As a general rule of thumb, we don't use aftermarket oil filters or air filters, fuel filters, especially not fuel pumps. Even if it's HIPAA, you know, this brand seems to be a little bit better. We're not going to use the spark plug or any of this other stuff in here. I'm going to send all that back to the customer and tell them, in my opinion, do not use any of it. Not had any good luck with any of that stuff. All we're looking for is the carburetor here. I also don't normally use the gaskets that come with it. I'm going to use OEM gaskets for this. Those aftermarkets just seem kind of thin, don't seem to work well. And this carburetor definitely looks a little bit higher quality than the one that was on there, than its counterpart. They are functionally the same, it looks like. This one does come with a bushing here for the governor rod. Now, a lot of times these will come without it on different brands and stuff. This one comes with a new one, which is good. Especially if you're missing the old carburetor, you're going to want that. I'm going to open this up and see if there's anything inside it, just because that's a good practice, whether it's aftermarket, OEM, or anything else. Sometimes they just don't have real good quality control on them. I got nothing on the inside here. Everything looks good. Just put it back together. And when we're doing this, HIPAA reaches out to me, usually at least a few times a month, and asks me to do promos and stuff for them. I would say out of carburetors out there that they're definitely the best aftermarket company that's sprung up over the last 5 years. They're ones that normally, if you get a carburetor from them for something, it is going to work 9 times out of 10. And you're not going to have a whole lot of modifications you're going to have to do to it. I've got that governor arm in there. And get our choke arm in. We are going to replace these gaskets again, even though they look new, just to make sure we don't have an air leak or something at the back side. Came apart pretty bad there. Take my razor blade and just kind of scrape that. See, when this goes back on, I'll show you the right way that it's supposed to go and what it's supposed to do, why it comes with sticky on it. Because this is like a sticker that's sticking on there. And that's why, even though it's new, it's wanting to stay kind of held together. As I go to clean this piece off, I'm just going to use some isopropyl alcohol on a rag. Just going to clean that all up real good. It's just got kind of sticky residue all around it. pretty good shape. And we've got the OEM replacement gasket here. And basically what that does, I'll put the part numbers for these down in the description, so you can order those if you need to. It's got your sticker to pull in the back. And then basically if you set it at the back side here, it'll hold this stud in as you go to put all this back together. Just got to get it lined up right. And that'll hold everything together while you're putting it back together, as opposed to putting it on the back side where they did, where it's going to be way more difficult to put back together. I got everything there pretty good. Yeah, there's still a little piece right there. Grab that isopropyl alcohol and just kind of wipe that down real good. Works well for getting all that sticky off. Okay, now we'll use our gasket for the other side of the insulator. Just a Kohler gasket there, just like such. Turn that guy around. We're going to put this all back together. Line everything up on the one stud to the left. Gonna plug this in while we have a second. A little bit easier access to the solenoid. Don't want to over tighten that. You can break that plastic insulator. Our fuel is done draining. I'm going to blow that tank out and then we'll fill it up and get some new fuel in it. You want that completely dry just in case there's any sort of moisture inside of it. Fuel line back on. Not sure what happened with this fuel container, why it's leaking there from the elbow right now. We use ethanol-free fuel treated with Phaser 3000 or tube butoxyethanol. Put some links to those in the description down below also. And we've got our other Kohler. Got our other Kohler gasket for up front. Go ahead and put our air filter housing on. Two 10mm nuts there. And then our 5/16 straight down through. Let's see what this thing does. No adjustment, straight out of the box, runs just beautifully. Put our air cleaner back on and the cover back on. I'm gonna leave this cover off for now because we're actually gonna check out the top and figure out what that oil leak is real quick. It's just 4 5/16 bolts holding the top cover on. Got to remove your dipstick also. Well, color me very surprised. None of these bolts are actually loose. And it's not actually seeping real bad, except for just right down at the bottom. And with as old as this thing is, that little bit of seepage, that's not a big deal. I thought there was a bunch more coming from the top, and apparently there wasn't. We're not going to recommend anything further because there's no active leak or anything like that. Cleaner cover. Well, there we have it. It's not about whether you put an aftermarket or an OEM carburetor on. It's about the quality of that carburetor. This carburetor here from some no-name company, I'm sure they're not going to stand behind their product either if this customer were to try to get whoever put it on to send it back. But HIPAA, in my mind, has been one of the leaders in this area for carburetors for the past 5 years or so. Seems like every time we put one on, customer brings it, or if we have to order something aftermarket, we usually look for HIPAA. They're ones that we can feel confident in putting on and knowing that those are going to properly work. They do send us collaborations and stuff like that, wanting us to do some videos and stuff for them. Just not something we're interested in at this point. But what do you guys feel about those HIPAA carburetors? Do you guys have good luck with them? This thing runs great after putting a HIPAA carburetor on without even having to mess with it. Of course, we thought it could have been the fuel or something like that, but the fuel looks great. I mean, it smells great. Don't think there was any issue there. It was just this carburetor that no matter what was not going to run right. Hopefully this helps somebody out if you're trying to replace the carburetor on your Kohler Courage or having issues with the same thing with already replacing the carburetor and it not running right or not running at all, turning off once you turn the choke off. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content. I'm going to start this thing up one last time just for good measure. Just like new, good as it can be. Thanks again.